Hi folks, welcome to Tuesday's edition of the iWrite Radio podcast stroke videocast. It doesn't look like Jimmy's going to be able to join us today, but we've got a wee clip of him, which I think will come up during our wee appraisal of the First Minister's press conference today. We're also going to have a chat about Tory war games. I think we've got a clip of Lord Hope agreeing with the devolved governments about the dangers of the internal market bill. We've got a wee clip for you as well of Michael Gove.
Oh, that's funny.
Getting a little bit of criticism from the backbenches.
Yeah.
What else were we going to go with? I've forgotten one.
Well, the presser is pretty good. There was the Scottish farmer.
Yes, Oliver Mundell, proving that his genes are definitely a direct result of his father. Incompetence obviously runs in the family. Okay, let's kick off with the presser. I thought it was really informative today.
You took the words out of my mouth there, Norry. It was. I went because it's hard to know where to start. Look, let me try a quick summary rather than go into the meat. She had Jason Leach on. She also had Shirley Ann Somerville, but Shirley Ann didn't have much to say. But Jason Leach was in form, and they were self-aware, the pair of them. The First Minister was saying halfway through the whole, the hour and a bit. What's another question? We're providing seminars here today, and really they were. The questions from the journalists were worthwhile questions that needed answered by most of us, and the answers were even better because they were deep and they were. And let me, for example, what was it? They weren't happy. They're unhappy about the number of people that are not going straight for a test if they get symptoms of COVID. We got figures on that. And so we got a bit of a lecture on that. So I'm not going into the detail of that. Got asked about, would there be widespread school closures? And which we got repeated by the First Minister that she wouldn't want to go there at all. But the main thing that we're talking about, and I think will probably be talked about later on, is the question of the tiers. She's talking about the tiers. Now, it's become very apparent that this is not the same as the English tiers at all. What she said they're trying to do is have an agreement with the opposition parties at Holyrood and the local councils, the council leaders across Scotland, and have a sort of framework so that they can they can get the agreement. She wants to avoid the confrontation that's going on between Westminster and Manchester. And she thinks the way to do that is to have a framework agreement, because the Scottish government has to make decisions quickly in this pandemic, but they want an agreement with the council leaders, with the opposition leaders, that they have a framework to work within. Beyond that,
I'm sorry, that isn't going to work. And the reason it isn't going to work is basically outlined by the continual calls from opposition parties for more money. The Scottish government simply doesn't have the money to do what the UK government can do. And yet both the Labour Party and the Tory Party are asking them to do more.
That's politics.
Well, yeah, but that's why it won't work. That's why they're not going to get an agreement on this. Or the agreement is not going to stand scrutiny, put it that way.
Let's put it this way, we're going to have next week, at the beginning of next week when they come back, I don't know whether it's Monday or Tuesday. They normally don't come in until a Tuesday at Holyrood.
Well, they're meeting tonight.
They're meeting the party leaders tonight, and COSLA, the leaders of the councils, tomorrow, over the next few days.
There's your first stumbling block. The Tories are going to want business involved. The Labour Party are going to want the unions involved. right? So that's your first stumbling block. The Tories are going to want them to take the lead from business. The Labour Party are going to want it taken from the unions. So I'm sorry, unless they have some sort of official cross-party group making these decisions, this is not going to work.
Well, it's worse than that, or it's more complicated than that, because judging by what was said today at the briefing, what they call granularity, going down into more detail. The question was asked a couple of times about, would there be more local restrictions? Would it go below council areas or health board areas? And it's almost certainly the plan is to do so. In fact, they referred to something that I could have guessed, because I picked something up this morning from the Evening News, the Edinburgh paper, that one of our local areas there are 14 positive cases in the part of Edinburgh we live in. So they've got these facts now down to that level. Populations of 4,000 to 5,000.
But that again is a drip roast for the opposition parties, because if they go down to local wards, say,
that's effectively what it is, ward level.
Well, if they want to do that, the opposition will want them to go down to blocks of 6 streets. And if they go down to blocks of 6 streets, they'll want them to go down to streets. And if they go down to streets, they'll want them to go to individual households.
So what are you going to predict, Norry? How far will they go?
The opposition, especially in Scotland, I can't see agreeing to stand behind Scottish government decisions unless the Scottish government is prepared to say any ward with 25 cases will go into tier 2. Anything above 25, they go into tier 3.
I think that probably ward level is almost certainly too local.
Yeah, but it won't be local enough for the opposition. I mean, if the Tories could have their way in Scotland, it would be done on a business by business way, so that
well, look,
the Crown and Cushion has to shut because we know 6 people were infected. But you can't do that.
Well, it probably means that Holyrood next week, when they have the debate about it, is going to be quite a showcase for these issues.
Well, it will be
that you've just raised, because it should be we should be able to identify the games that are being played by the opposition leaders.
Well, the games are already being played. I mean, the questions that have no answers will continue to get asked. It'll continue to be, why can't you give business more money? We'll just ignore the fact you have a finite budget, but these businesses need more money. Give it to them.
Yeah, well, here's a question for you, because at the moment, the Scottish government are talking to the opposition leaders and the council leaders. And you're saying they haven't mentioned talking to the unions or business yet, but I assume that that's ongoing anyway.
Well, the Tory party stance will be the Tory party stance. We are the party of business. Therefore, business leaders should be involved in this decision making. Every time you add another group to the decision making process, you add another 4 arguments. There's no point at which business is ever going to say, yes, you should shut us down.
Yeah, no, well, let's try and predict at what level they're likely to go to. They're probably just going to stick at council areas, which is smaller than health board areas, isn't it?
Well, they will have discussions that will be as meaningful as not at all with business. They will waste their breath with these people to make them feel better. But the fact of the matter is, if you're treating this as a health issue, you treat it as a health issue.
Not as far as the Tories and Richard Leonard are concerned. As far as I can see, Richard Leonard was on yesterday. Why does he sit so close to the camera when he's on Zoom?
He likes to show off his hair.
God. It's just so off-putting when you flick across a channel and there's Richard Leonard filling the screen
Well,
his hair's partially off the edge.
well, Richard Leonard's area of knowledge is unions. That was his career. So that's what he talks about.
Well, look, we've got a lot to look forward to on the topic that you covered. Thanks, Norry. That was good. It's my turn to come back and just say that the press are from the very top. We discovered something. We had queries about the number of the reality, the validity of the figures that we got for the number of positive cases over the weekend. The tests apparently were being delayed, etc. But we discovered halfway through the presser today that there are seeds of blunting in the figures. In other words, that the restrictions that were brought in, the rule of 6 across the whole of Scotland, and then the household restrictions in the central belt, together they seem to be having a blunting effect, and there is a possibility that the virus is not accelerating in Scotland at the moment. Only a possibility, but there's a bit of good news.
Well, yeah, but then you still got the idiot question about, is this down to, I'll explain to you, we get no results for about 2 weeks, possibly 3. Oh, is this blunting down to the fact that you've introduced draconian measures in the central belt? No, because they've only been introduced for 10 days. You idiot. Go and do some maths. Get your child to sit beside you during these conversations.
Add 10 days to take 10 days back from today's date and see where you are and what happened on that date. Yeah. What was another thing that concerned me? There was a kind of, they were worried about people not going quickly enough to get their tests. But on the other hand, they were putting people off going, if you go quick for your test, it could be delayed. They kept telling us, they're still telling us that some of these tests are going astray.
Well, the testing thing is interesting. I mean, that's pure politics from the Scottish Conservatives. There is obviously a problem about delivering the test results in a reasonable time. And it's coming from the Glasgow Lighthouse, because the Glasgow Lighthouse, as far as I can tell, and I haven't seen this definitively yet, but it appears the Glasgow Lighthouse was having to take a lot of English tests. Therefore, Scottish tests were going to another part of the UK testing system to be tested, and the results were taking longer.
It's worse than that, Norry. Some of these tests were apparently going abroad to Germany and places.
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter where they go. It matters how long it takes to get the result back. Yeah. And that is basically, so there's a problem. Well, according to Douglas Ross, there isn't a problem, and it's terrible that the First Minister should blame the people that are responsible for it. It's not Scottish NHS that's responsible, it's the UK testing system, but you're not allowed to blame them because it's the UK testing system. I mean, I watched his 5-minute SNP bad slot on the BBC today.
DRoss.
Yeah, and basically what he said was, 2 governments in Scotland, Rishi Sunak's wonderful. 2 governments in Scotland, Rishi Sunak's wonderful. And when he was asked a direct question about anything, 2 governments in Scotland, SNP aren't doing enough, blah, blah, blah. And what's your solution to this problem, Mr. Ross? Rishi Sunak's wonderful. It was a complete waste of time. And then the interviewer, his last question, God, I've forgotten what it was about. It was political, pure politics. And he said, "Oh, and I now have a political question for you." And I thought, but all the questions you asked were answered politically, because Douglas Ross doesn't have any knowledge about anything except how to attack the SNP.
We'll see. He's not performing well at the moment. He's got a very low profile. People don't know who he is, even though he's a referee. And even when they do find out who he is, they don't like him.
Well, I mean, we need more information from the SNP government. So you can ignore that as well.
I ignore that as well. Well, look, the question of politics, there was only one, just to finish up on the presser, 90% of the questions from the journalists were sensible, apart from the guy from the Telegraph, a young fellow called Richard. Oh, no, it's the Express, my favorite paper that I never read. It was Richard Percival, instead of the guy from Middlesbrough, I think his accent is, but I could be wrong. It's not neck of the woods. Hartlepool, probably, because I used to go there. So it was the Express, Richard Percival. He actually asked a completely political question. It was the last question. What did he ask about? He said, he talked about wargaming. There's been a leak, and apparently the Tories have been wargaming the situation that the polls are so good for yes, for independence, that the Tories are wargaming how they're going to react to it. She obviously said, well, I'm not going to answer you here, because we don't answer political questions.
Yes, this is about COVID. The National has, I think, 2 articles about this leak from, now, let me get this right. This isn't Tories, the Tory party doing this. This came from an outside think tank who sent letters out to certain MPs, Tory MPs, including Michael Gove. And essentially they've got three courses of action. 1, deny the right to the vote. 2, offer basically the vow version 2. And 3, have a referendum on a new constitutional settlement.
4, they couldn't even persuade the European Union to block any.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Any effort by an independent Scotland to join.
I can see that working.
I can just see it. I can just see an awful lot of leaders across Europe saying, let's stick it to the English.
Well, it's interesting that none of the suggestions were go full democratic and give the people of Scotland the right to decide their own future. Not one. Oh, and there is a 5th option, by the way, Mr. Johnson. You could be an honest broker in this and just do what David Cameron did give them a vote. That's not even considered a possibility.
Well, it is, as long as they manage to fiddle the vote.
Well, what I was surprised that there wasn't the option of changing the franchise so that only English unionist Tories can vote in the referendum.
Oh, yes. Either, Scots who are living in England will be allowed to vote, or English people living in Scotland wouldn't be allowed to vote. I'm not sure. What's the point of it?
Nobody that wants Scottish independence is allowed to vote.
Well,
that's going to be the franchise. Well, it was interesting when DRoss was asked about it on the BBC today. He said, "I don't comment on leaks."
Oh, he was asked about this.
He was asked about it, and it was, "We don't comment on leaks." So the next time there's anything leaked, like for instance, WhatsApp messages from Mr. Morell, I'll expect Douglas Ross to refuse to comment on it because it's a leak.
Because it's a leak. You said at the start of this item that it wasn't actually a government thing, this wargaming. Well, you could be right, but it's certainly a Tory thing by all accounts.
Well, it's a Tory think tank. Yeah.
The memo was written by Hanbury, which was set up by Amit Gill, former Prime Minister David Cameron's Director of Strategy, and Paul Stevenson, who was Director of Communications for the pro-Brexit group Vote Leave. And one of the partners is a guy whose name I'm going to try and pronounce, James Kanagasuriam, who worked with the Scottish Conservatives on elections in 2016 and 17.
Yeah.
So it's got nothing to do with the Tories at all. And
I think all those suggestions would be far too complicated for Boris Johnson. I think he'll go with the May line. Now is not the time.
Oh, does that allow me to have a go at playing a little clip here?
Or have you got the Michael Gove clip
I
handy?
think so.
Have a bash at it then.
Have a bash at that. See if I can get this played for you. Yes, here we go.
Are we intro to this? This is Michael Gove in the Commons.
Can you see my screen, Norry?
Yep, we're okay. We're
This
where
is
we
Michael
should be.
Gove in the Commons. We may. It's very short. I may play it twice because sometimes I've seen this start a bit quick. Here we go.
Union than we ever could inside through a variety of methods and arrangements open to us, open to Border Force, and open to our security and intelligence
Look
services.
at the face.
We can intensify the security that we give to the British people. And the third thing is that there are European Union than we ever could inside through a variety of methods and arrangements open to us, open to Border Force, and open to our security and intelligence services. We can intensify the security that we give to the British people. And the third thing is that
Now, basically, he was asked a question. The accusation is that because we're leaving the EU, I better clear this, don't I?
Yeah.
Oh, here we are. Stop share. Yeah, the accusation is that because we're leaving the EU, we won't get as much intelligence information as we would when we were part of the EU. And he's making excuses for it there. And he's talking absolute pish. And Theresa May is creasing herself on the back benches.
I think he actually claimed at one point that we would get more security for the British people. Gove is incredible. I mean, neither his skin tone nor temperature alters when he should be embarrassed about his lies. It's stunning what he gets away with, or what he thinks he's getting away with might be a better way to put it.
Well, there was an article today by The Guardian about somebody's proposing that they should legalize the supply of ecstasy, amphetamine and cocaine in the UK. I'm not sure who. And they'd mugged up sort of packets of cocaine that you could be buying over the counter in the chemist shop. Now, why would I mention that? I don't know. It's just the thought of COVID standing there behind the Speaker's chair in the House of Commons, dribbling. We'll have to get that clip out and play it one day. Talking
of Tory incompetence, Oliver Mundell.
Oh goodness me!
Son of Fluffy.
Why did he become a politician?
I think it was genetic. They had to pass the stupidity on.
Well, no, it's probably because his parents couldn't find any other job for him, so they thought, well, you can follow your father into politics.
Couldn't find a river deep enough to drown him in. Anyway, the Scottish Farmer, a Farmer's magazine, Oliver Mundell kicked up, well, he called it inconsequential, I think, the fact that Kate Higgins, remember Kate from way back?
We used to interview Kate in Leaked FM days.
Kate now advises the Scottish government on the Scottish brand. So Marks and Spencer had been selling Scottish meat with a big Union Jack sticker on it. And Kate pointed this out, and Oliver Mundell thought it was going too far, that protection of the Scottish brand was a total waste of time.
Waste of business, government time.
Yes, exactly. So the Scottish Farmer, as I say, not a particular farmer, a magazine, has a piece slating Oliver Mundell for not giving a toss about the Scottish brand. Scotch brand, I think they refer to it as.
Well, that's the one, we've got Scotch whiskey and Scotch food. It's the only time most Scotch.
Fish, beef and lamb.
There you go. But you got Scotch tomatoes as well, I think.
Okay.
Well, maybe I could be wrong. Is it just meat? Well, anyway, but certainly the brand Scotch. We've got the whiskey, obviously, and we've also got meat. You're right. And Keep Scotland the Brand campaign, which has slammed newly installed Scottish Conservative Rural Affairs spokesman Oliver Mundell for dismissing mislabeled meat as petty, small and trivial. And this report is in Scottish Farmer. So he's really not getting a good press. I mean, how bad do you have to be to upset a farmer's magazine and you're a Tory?
Well, I think farmers are getting just a little jittery about their erstwhile masters, the Tories. I think they're beginning to think they might have made a mistake giving them an 80%. Well, the farmers didn't do it themselves, but farmers tend to be Tory supporters. And it looks like it might cost them quite a bit of money, if not their businesses.
I like the quote. This is Scotland, the brand. It's jaw-dropping that in a time we are facing potential food shortages because of COVID-19 and Brexit, that there are any Scottish politicians who are not wholly behind Scotland's farmers, crofters and smallholders.
Doesn't pull any punches. But the Scottish Farmer, I don't think that's the big one. I can't remember what the big one's called. The big publication they
Farmers
have.
Weekly, maybe, I don't know. I'm not an expert on farming.
No, me neither. But Mundell, following steadfastly in his father's footsteps, right into the murky waters of ignorance and stupidity. Still, nothing to see here, folks. Move on. What else have we got?
I think you might have a clip for us.
I do. I have. Yeah. Lord Hope.
Yes. Who was presumably a Supreme Court judge, I believe, wasn't he?
Yeah, was he? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
This harps back to our stance on the Internal Markets Bill. We've been screaming and shouting about the effect on devolution for months. Since it was first published, we've been making the point that this is not a good thing for Scotland or the other devolved countries. And I'll just reiterate the fact that one minister at Westminster could override the whole of the Scottish government, the whole of the Scottish Parliament, in fact.
Shall I give you a quick bio of Lord Hope, Baron Hope of Craighead, retired Scottish judge, first Deputy President of the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom. He's a very senior man.
Well, here's his clip.
There was room for a carefully worked out devolution of legislative power, which enabled the devolved authorities to pursue their own legitimate policy aims as to the sale of goods where, in their judgment, this was in the public interest. Nobody doubts that the way this freedom has been handled works well at present. It is not in any way a barrier to trade between our nations. On the contrary, it has real benefits. It enables new trading policies to be tried out in one area before the rest. The bill itself accepts that such divergences as exist at present can remain. What the bill seeks to do, however, is to replace the freedom to develop local standards or separate policy aims in the future with centrally driven, overriding market principles. It does not seek to repeal the various exceptions to the list of reserved powers that are set out in the statutes, but its effect would be the same, as there would be no stopping traders bringing goods in from other areas that do not conform to the home area's rules. The devolved powers are rendered worthless by this new system. UK ministers are given powers to do things which contravene the devolution settlements without consultation, let alone consent. The opportunity to create an internal market by agreement through the continued development of common frameworks, about which Baroness Andrews spoke so well earlier today, is being undermined because it is being ignored. The common frameworks are not even mentioned in this bill. The effect of the bill has been described as a power grab by the Scottish National Party. I'm not given to hyperbole, which I thought this was, but now having read the bill and the well-founded and withering report of the Constitution Committee, I can see why this expression has been used by them, and now in Wales too. There is something very far wrong here. That is the challenge that we face. We do not need this bill, but if we have to have it, it must be put right.
You can't get much more senior than that, can you?
Well, finally, somebody who is not going to be tarred a nationalist has spotted what the problem with it is. But I'll say it again because this is important. Excuse Excuse me. You also have a democratic deficit here, because if the Westminster Parliament votes on an English-only legislation that is then forced on Scotland, Scottish MPs don't get a say. The Scottish government at Holyrood does not get a say. It will be English MPs deciding policy in Scotland.
The Scottish MPs sitting in Westminster won't be allowed to vote on it.
Exactly. If it happens to be something that is considered, deemed by the Speaker to be English law. And that's got huge ramifications. We will literally then be a colony.
We will be a second rate. The MPs will be second rate.
Yeah.
They're already second rate MPs, Scottish MPs.
Well, as I say, it's no longer the West Lothian question, it's the East Sussex question.
What's the matter with East Sussex? I've not been there, actually.
Well, all I'm saying is that it's now a question of not Scottish MPs voting on things that are English only, where they're always going to be outnumbered by English MPs. It's now English only MPs voting on things that could have a direct impact on decisions made in Scotland, Holyrood, with no input from any Scottish representatives anywhere, Holyrood or Westminster. It's a real can of worms. And I'm glad, God forgive me for saying it, I'm glad it's been picked up in the Lords.
Aye, well, that's the report. I think I mentioned it yesterday in the programme that, yes, this Lord's report was published, so it would be a topic we would cover. So I'm glad it came up, because I forgot we'd said we'd recover it.
Well, I don't think what the Lord's saying will make any difference whatsoever.
No, I agree with you. I don't think any difference, but we needed to discuss it.
Well, they may get to block it because of the clause that's in the bill about ignoring international treaties. So that's where it'll be fought. I can't see it being fought on the devolution question.
That's the hot button issue, isn't it? That's the one that most people can notice about. That's a bit to do with the Irish border, isn't it?
Well, that's the hot button one because it looks like a big question. But the reality is the truly hot button one here is the clawing back to Westminster of agreements made with the devolved countries.
I would say it's like 95% of the devolution. I mean, it is turning Holyrood into a parish council.
Well, and because they weren't prepared to face the electorate by changing the devolved settlement in law, because they wouldn't stand up and make the argument, they've gone this route. And anybody that thinks the Tories will not do exactly to our NHS what they've done to their own, using this as an excuse, the internal market bill. And remember, as far as the Tories are concerned, the NHS in England is a marketplace, and they will do everything they can to the Scottish NHS to stay.
They're making a fortune out of this. I mean, they're minting it just now, this Tory government.
Well, and you won't even have to look at the shade of the Tory government, because it won't be the government that makes these decisions. It'll be an individual minister.
And don't forget, American companies, if they get the trade deal that they're expected to get eventually, there might be arbitration, but it won't be arbitration that we'll be sitting on. It'll be American companies in arbitration with some offshore body.
Well, the ramifications of it are huge. And the press, okay, they've got COVID on their plate, but the press are really not looking at this in any depth at all. And this government is getting a free pass from our press at the moment. And it's shocking.
But God, come on, Norry. When did they ever not?
Well, no. I mean, well, let's put it this way. The political parties in this country, if they're anything but blue, get in-depth digging reporting. At the moment, the Tory party is using them as a press release surface. It really is bad. And I think I've said before, I'm genuinely worried about where we're going to be 3 or 4 years down the line.
Could be quicker than that, Norry.
Well, I think we'll start to see some serious gerrymandering of the political voting system. I think the Tories are going to quite happily make it impossible for anybody to get into government but them.
So, I think we must be drawing towards the end. Did you hear anything from our friend Jimmy, the taxi driver?
Yes, we did. Jimmy is out and about making a living, unlike us old guys who can afford to sit at home and twiddle our thumbs. So as many of you will have noticed, Jimmy is not 100% behind the lockdown in the hospitality. He must have had a very slow morning this morning because he sent us a wee video.
Oh, very good.
Here's Jimmy. In his taxi, of course.
Mixed messages from the media guys. Have the politicians blown it? Public confidence is rock bottom. Edinburgh's deserted today. What are other cities like? And how on earth do they think they can lock down for a couple of weeks and people will just pick up the pieces of their life and start driving the economy for them again? Have fun.
I'm taking it.
Messages from the media guys.
Sorry.
Politicians blown it.
I
think Jimmy's had a very slow day.
I don't think there's a lot of people out there. I think even I discovered that on Saturday, I think I told you.
Well, he was telling me that he's been busier in the mornings than at night.
Oh, well.
So I'm not quite sure how that works.
That's a good point. On that very topic, we did not discover. There was one question that everybody wanted answered, people like Jimmy anyway, in the hospitality business. Would the current restrictions due to end on Monday be rolled over for another week? Because they won't be ready until the following week to introduce any fresh regulations. But we didn't get a definite answer for that.
It wouldn't surprise me. To be honest, I wouldn't be in the least bit surprised if she
It's the easiest thing to do, rather than have a gap.
Yeah, but also remember she was definitive about them finishing on
being reviewed. Well,
26th, I think, is the date.
Yeah, 26th. We will see tomorrow. She'll make most of it. We'll get a lot of information at the press briefing tomorrow. She'll have had her cabinet meeting tomorrow morning, and before then, presumably, she'll have met with the local authority leaders and the opposition party leaders. So, and she did say that we'd get an awful lot more info tomorrow. So tune in tomorrow, guys, for more information.
But was that not really about her various tiers?
That's the point. We won't get any more answers to your challenge earlier on. I don't think we'll get all of that tomorrow, but we certainly get the question, what will happen on next Monday for another, will that be extended? We'll get that tomorrow.
I think I'll make a wee prediction here that we won't have 3 tiers. We'll have 4 tiers.
I think you could be right, and they won't line up with England. I
think maybe 1, 2, 3 might, or they'll be very close, but I think there'll be a 4th serious lockdown tier as well. I'm more interested to see what triggers them. If they're going to be bold enough to say, if your rates are at 50 in 100,000, you go into tier 2.
I'm not sure anybody's worked out a formula to give you an X number that you could use.
I agree with you. I don't think there is that amount of certainty, but that would actually be the argument about the tiers and the numbers and what triggers what would be ongoing, but it would be a way of saying to the population, you don't want to go into tier 3, right? You better start obeying these rules.
Not sure she wants to do that.
But, you know, it's a bit of a stick that isn't taking money out of people's pockets. Well, we'll see.
We shall see.
We'll call it a day at that. Thanks for being with us, Stuart.
Yeah, I'll enjoy that as usual.
Thanks for being with us, Jimmy, via video, our very own mad taxi man. And thank you for listening, folks. We'll catch up with you tomorrow. Have we got PMQs tomorrow?
Oh, I don't know if there's PMQs, but I know that Holyrood's still out. So it'd be 12:15 for a press briefing. I don't know whether, honestly, I don't know whether Westminster's in. Did we have politics shows today with Joe Coburn or somebody like that?
I think so. We'll see. They're a bit later down south for their holidays and stuff, aren't they?
Yeah, they may not be
Couple of
starting
weeks,
until this
actually.
weekend. So you're right. It could
Yeah.
still be.
So possible PMQs tomorrow. But as I say, thank you for giving us your attention, people. And we'll catch up with you tomorrow, regardless of whether there's a PMQs or not.
We'll be back.
Cheers for now.